Are you a filmmaker or are you a content creator?
We're getting caught up in that whole algorithm thing and we're getting sucked back into the matrix. When in reality, we didn't want to be a part of the matrix. That's what made us different.
Here's where I think it gets really dangerous for creators. You start to lose some of the artistry.
You know, it was a job I had to do. And I mean, it looked stellar. She didn't like anything. I just wanted like TikTok style video. Meaning I could have actually came there with my phone.
I honestly did not care what anybody thought about it. I didn't care. When you're a filmmaker, 9 times out of 10, you're creating for you. But when you're a content creator, you're almost always creating for the audience. And I wonder if like that was one of the things that like this week, with all these YouTubers popping up, talking about how they're, quitting YouTube and they're leaving YouTube. It's like content creators have to create for like the algorithm. They have to create for the audience. They have to create for retention. But a lot of these guys, I think, were filmmakers and they kind of found themselves becoming content creators.
Yeah.
And so like they're kind of being torn away from being able to be the filmmaker and create for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, as someone who sits kind of like in the middle, like where do you find yourself?
It's weird because I've been watching some of the videos online and seeing what these guys are saying. And I'm glad they're saying it because I'm trying to step back into the whole YouTube thing. But it made me pause to kind of figure out like the why.
Yeah.
Like why do I want to go on YouTube and why am I creating content on Instagram and like what is my why? And if it's to work with brands and then it's almost the same thing as corporate filmmaking work or corporate video work because I have a client, they hire me for a particular service and I have to give it to them. So if I'm making content for a brand and I'm doing the same thing, but I also have to produce numbers. Whereas in corporate, I don't have to. That's their job. They have a marketing team. I deliver the video. It's up to their marketing team to figure out what to do with that content. For a content creator, you got to create the content and then produce the numbers so you can continue to work with the brand or continue to sell your product. And then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
And that's where I think some of the stress can come in.
Personally, I've been juggling both for so long. And I didn't even realize that I was juggling 2 different things. I thought I was just doing one thing. I just was like, oh, I'm a creator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a filmmaker, I'm a content creator, videographer. I didn't care what the title meant, but I'm realizing now more and more that those titles are very different things. I know you had mentioned to me once before that you got hired to go and do a job where you were supposed to be more of the content creator, but you kind of attacked it like a filmmaker, and that the client had a weird experience based off of that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it was a job I had to do. And, she hired me to shoot vertical content. She said it was for TikTok. Now I couldn't turn off my filmmaking brain, so I'm focusing on lighting, composition, it looked stellar.
Yeah.
I sent it over proud, chest out. She didn't like anything. And I was like, what okay. So I have a meeting, it was figure out. And she was like, Marcus, I mean, this looks good, but it doesn't look like this. I just wanted like TikTok style video. Meaning I could have actually came there with my phone.
It's probably what you wanted, huh?
But yeah, she just didn't. She was like, it was just too much work. And, I was wondering why the price was so high and, like that type of stuff. And I was like, damn, I should have just kind of turned off the filmmaking brain and turned on the content creator brain. But I don't think I fully accepted that brain yet.
And I think that's where like a lot of people, even myself included, sometimes will struggle. It's like there are times where, I am like heavy. Like I got into all this because I wanted to be a filmmaker first. This is before even being a content creator was even a thing. I watched movies, I saw other people's videos, I saw commercials, ads, whatever. And I was like, oh, I want to be a part of the process that makes that thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then as social media grew, and then especially around 2020, as TikTok started to kind of take over, like it became ridiculous to sort of like see this like change happen where like, oh, we got to create content too.
Mm-hmm.
Because content creates reach, which is ultimately not a bad thing. You know what I mean? But it is one of those things where it's like, how much of your artistic like decisions do you have to sacrifice to play towards the content? Which, like you mentioned, it feels a lot like creating for a client.
Yeah.
Because like, a lot of times, I mean, anyone here, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the chat right now who have clients, who shop for clients. And I see Mr. Cam Mackey back in here. Jesus, man.
Look at those pants.
I know someone like Mr. Cam Mackey who definitely shoots a lot of client stuff. There is always that balance, right? There's that balance of do we do what I want to do as the creator, or do we do what the client wants? And I feel like that's the same thing that's happening with, content creation. It's like, do we do what I want to do as the creator, or do I do what I feel is going to work in the content creation, landscape? Do I put 15 cuts in the first 5 seconds because I know that's going to keep people's attention, or can I let a slow push in tell the same story?
Or you were told it'll keep people's attention. See, I have a revelation over the last few days. I've really been thinking about this hard. And I came to the conclusion that I'm just going to put out what I want. I'm just going to make what I want. I'm not going to, if you really look at like Instagram or TikTok, and you'll see a bunch of people, gurus, that say, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that and da 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 da. And it's like, are any of you guys doing like case studies on people? Like, where's this information coming from? Where's this? You have to do a jump cut, like 20 jump cuts in a reel, or it has to be less than 10 seconds to keep someone's attention. I just watched a TikTok part 1 through 10 because it was a story.
Yeah.
And I wanted to figure out how this was going to end. Right. So that wasn't a 10-second short. It was 10 clips. They were all 60 seconds long. And I wanted to watch the entire thing. I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think people are just tired of it. Like, I go on Instagram and I'm guilty. I had to do the jump cut thing. I had to put the film burn in my reels. I had to put the distortion transitions. I had to add the what do you call them? The hits and the risers.
Yeah.
I had to, I felt like I had to do that. And I don't like doing that. We're getting caught up in that whole algorithm thing and the rules of that. And we're getting sucked back into the matrix when in reality, we didn't want to be a part of the matrix. That's what made us different.
What I honestly think is happening, because this has happened even on my own channel, is sometimes I think there are pieces of content that you need to make as an artist, as a filmmaker, as a content creator, as a whatever title you want to give yourself. There are certain pieces of content that you need to make that you don't care what it actually is going to be, like what it means. Like, for example, this last year, we made a collection of videos around the Red Komodo X, right? And when I made those videos, I honestly did not care what anybody thought about them. Like, the format was so different.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost 100% voiceover.
It was a movie.
On one of them. It was more of a movie.
I told you that. It was like a short film.
It was kind of made that way. And it is still, to this day, probably one of my favorite videos I've ever made on my channel. It technically was a flop at first. Like, it did not. As far as numbers go, it was a flop. But out the gate, I was so proud of it because it was like artistically exactly what I wanted it to be. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I think that it's really important as artists that we continue to like respect that artistic side of ourselves and create stuff that we love and that we're passionate about. But understand that, like, at the same time, like, you got to put food on the table.
Yeah.
Last week we had Brittany Janae on, and she said that for her, like, content creator is like an umbrella term. And then underneath that is filmmaker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which, like, I can kind of like sort of like resonate with a little bit, because I feel like in order to be a really solid content creator, you have to have filmmaking skills. You know what I mean? Like, operating a camera, understanding sound, understanding lighting. Those to me are filmmaking techniques, at least in the way that I grew up learning them. But I also understand that there's a part of filmmaking that is script writing, stories, like crafting a perfect 3 arc structure and like, you know, and doing all that. And that all falls under filmmaking. And I think if you have really strong filmmaking skills, it makes you a better content creator. But I just think it's like sometimes we just get like, we use these terms as like filters to sort of like dictate like, oh, like, yeah, you know, it's going to be probably a talking head video. That's going to be probably more of a content creator, right? That said, I would say that every video that Casey Neistat ever created wasn't necessarily a talking head, but it was more vloggy. But the way he told his stories, it still felt like films.
Yeah.
And so I do think that sometimes when we get caught up into these terminology between like what makes you a filmmaker, like I know Brandon was asking, like at what point do you switch from being a content creator to a filmmaker? I honestly think it's really up to you.
Yeah.
It's just whatever title you want, but just creating what it is that you ultimately want to do. The fear that I have is when you allow the pursuit of becoming a quote unquote content creator in its new general term, and it sways some of your filmmaking decisions, you start to lose some of the artistry. And then here's where I think it gets really dangerous for creators is when you as an artist feel like you want to go left, but you feel like in order to be a successful content creator, you need to go right. And then when you go right and you don't get what you expected, or you didn't get the views, or you didn't get the likes, or you didn't get what you thought you were going to get, then you feel burned out.